Like that. Looks good? It looks good? Stay like that. There you go.
Oh, where's that go?
There you go. Start on there. Oh.
What happened there? That done it on its own. Oh, I thought I did it on its own. Yeah.
There you go. Start there with AB Boxing News here. We're Eddie Hearn in Los Angeles, your second home.
Yes.
Thought New York was your second home, man.
Welcome. Good to see you. Whoa, look at this. Amazing. These things move on their own. Can't believe that. I mean, the zone is so magical. They've even got like signs that move when there's an interview. Unbelievable.
Let's talk about this event. Danny Jacobs, Julio Cesar Chavez. What ultimately led for the venue to be in Arizona? I think
we had 3 venues for the fight. We had Talking Stick Arena, which was the one where his father had his last ever professional fight. We had Texas and we had Las Vegas. We hadn't agreed anything with Julio and Danny. Nothing was signed. We put a request in to Las Vegas to try and clear the date. VADA and the commission turned up to test Julio, and he said, I haven't signed anything to take part in the fight yet. He didn't test. They said, now we want a hearing with you. So we went to the ABC and the other commissions. They said, no problem, he can test, he can take part here as long as he signs for full testing, which he has. And Phoenix is where we chose. Obviously, very strong Hispanic area where we're going. And I love the narrative of it being the scene of his father's last ever pro fight. So, you know, I have a soft spot for Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. He's a little bit crazy. He's had his problems, but I believe he has a good heart. And this is his opportunity. It's a massive opportunity. And it's a great fight with Danny Jacobs. And, you know, for Danny, this is a great fight as well. Because on a profile perspective, this is a chance for him to move up to 68 and announce himself on the scene and try and become a 2-weight world champion. So, you know, some people will criticise the fight, some people will moan, but they'll all watch because Chavez is box office. Because, you know, he's good, he's bad, he's crazy, he's whatever, but he's the son of a legend. And it hasn't been easy for him, you know, especially growing up in Mexico in that position. So I have a soft spot for him, and may the best man win.
Soft spot, you know, his history is well documented, and it's been unfortunate. Some of your shows, we had fighters pull out or certain situations happen. Is there any concern about possibly this show being last minute?
We have Gabe Rosado, who is on the card, and he's also standing by to fight either guy if they don't make the fight for any reason. You know, a Mexican guy from the Mexican media just said, "Oh, do you think that's disrespectful to have a guy standing by?" I said, "No. You know, with his track record as a promoter, you have to protect your other fighter in Danny Jacobs and the show. So it's not disrespectful. I believe he will make the fight. He's training very hard. He looks great. You know, if we would have turned up today, what we got, like 7 weeks, something like that. If we would have turned up today and he looked 220 pound, like, you know, out of shape, I would have had my concerns. He was here on time. We know he's been training hard. He looks in great shape. And it's a big fight. This is a big fight. Everyone's going to be talking about it.
Julio is from Mexico. His father's from Mexico. Let's get to that topic. WBC and their, I don't know if you heard about the Climbiero rule. Yeah. What's your take on that? Is that a way of another loophole of boxing and fighters maybe?
You know what I think the problem is we need either the testing agency or a national body to start making decisions in terms of suspensions, fines, all that kind of stuff. Like the WBC, and I love the WBC. Maurizio is, he's a friend of mine. I believe Maurizio has a good heart. You know, I don't believe in all his decisions, but he probably don't believe in all my decisions. So that's life. It's not really up to the WBC, in my opinion, to make decisions on testing results. Does that make sense? That should be done by VADA. But VADA is an independent agency that just reports the results. So the problem that we're having is, you're fighting him, you test positive with VADA, it's up to the commission at that time, or it's up to WBC at that time, to decide the future of your career, right? Wouldn't it be better? Like in England, we have UCAD, right? Again, they're not perfect, but what they do is they suspend you. And you can't fight in Britain if you test positive or you're banned by UCAD, right? There's always going to be criticism. I just feel like I wish VADA had the authority to actually set some guidelines to say, if you fail a test, this is what happens. If you fail 2 tests, this is what happens. If you fail 3 tests, really clear. Because the issue is, and again, I'm quite a trusting person, so when you speak to a fighter and they say, I've never touched any, blah, 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 like, I tend to believe them. But also, I'm not an idiot, and I know that people are cheating. So you have to be responsible for what goes in your system. When there's a trace amount of something, there is sometimes occasions where it might be meat, it might be a contaminated supplement, it might be all this other stuff. So in my opinion, there needs to be different bans based on what that is. I don't know anything about this meat situation in Mexico. I believe there's science to it, but then what are you going to do? Every Mexican fighter that tests positive for clenbuterol, just blame it on the meat. I guess the trace amounts are so small that there is that potential. So I believe they've raised the amount or that you have to test positive for. So I don't know too much about it, but at the end of the day, we as promoters get the brunt of it. Do you know what I mean? And we don't decide shit. Like, I don't decide who. I mean, Julio Cesar Martinez is my fighter with Canelo, right? So now people are going to me, what are you going to do about it? I said, what do you mean? He's fighting for the WBC world title. They've approved him, like, he's not. But this is the problem with the VADA clean boxing program. They just report the results for someone else to decide what happens. The clean boxing program needs to be, we are testing, this is the situation, and these are the penalties. And it has to be universally acknowledged by the commissions and the governing bodies.
Canelo, impressive win at 175 against Sergey Kovalev. A lot of fans or media wanted to encourage him to fight, to get Andre Ward out of retirement and fight Canelo. I know you have a lot of fighters under your stable that could fight Canelo, but is that a fight that you want as a fight fan, Andre Ward versus Canelo Alvarez?
Do you know what? I actually saw that tweeted or whatever it was the other day, and I thought, wow, I'd love to see that fight. I mean, could Andre make 175 now? Maybe. But what a fight. What a fight. So, we'll see.
What's your reaction towards Deontay Wilder's interview? He said that if they were offering him to be franchise champion, he'll reject it. What's your take?
I don't believe him. No. Because when you become franchise champion, it will enable you to not face a guy you might not want to fight, or your team might not want to fight.
Last, I know you got other people to go. I talked to Gabe Rosado. I don't think he was specifically targeting one Anthony Joshua, but we was kind of talking about the disparities of fighters getting underpaid in terms of boxing, MMA, and even him in his position. And, you know, nowadays a lot of fighters get tainted. If you lose once, your payday gets downgraded much more decisively. So he was saying, how is it that Joshua has one loss and he's still getting paid millions? So is there any way you could clear it out?
Yeah, because he's got one loss and he's fighting for the Unified World Heavyweight Championship and he's one of the biggest stars in the sport. Gabe has many losses, but he's always in really good fights. And he will be on this card as well. And I love Gabe. He's always in great fights. But that's called sport. That's called life. If you lose on the way up to this game is snakes and ladders. So you work your way up, and when you suffer a loss, you go back down again, right? It's what level the loss is at. So Gabe lost against Maciej Sulecki in a non-world title fight, in a 10-round fight. So unfortunately, he goes back down the ladder. Great fight, by the way, and we will always give Gabe opportunities because he's a top guy. But Joshua lost at the very highest level of the board and went down one step. And, you know, but it is bizarre that he makes his biggest ever payday coming off the back of a stoppage loss. But that's why he's got a great promoter.
First time, Eddie, Gustavo Neri, AB Boxing News. Thank you, Eddie. We'll talk a bit. Trabajo. Eso, se ve.